Have you heard of Hungry Hippo model? If not, let's find out. Before we get into that, the major issue of transformers architecture is that while inference, the transformers architecture have to look at the old sequences, even though there are certain tokens which gets generated, because of which, for let's say a context length of L, the inference would take L square computations. Now this is a major problem. Now if you look at it, this is kind of already solved in recurrent neural network, wherein in recurrent neural network, the output is only generated based on a hidden state and an input. And that's also fed into the next networks, wherein the end output essentially only looks at the hidden state of that particular layer and the input as well. Now to kind of adopt this is where state space model was invented. Now how the state space model works is state space model only works on two categories. One is a state output and an output equation. Now how the state update is happening is a state update happens wherein it takes the previous states and then tries to understand how this would influence the current state and also how the input would influence the state. And once the state is updated, then it gets down to the output, where the output is pretty much generated based on the recent state update and also how the input directly influences the output. Now this seems to solve the problem which transformers were actually having. So that's when there are a couple of new architectures invented. One is linear time invariant to kind of solve the time invariant issue in state space model. But one of the other architecture which is invented is called Hippo. Now it's the reason why it's named is it's because it's high order polynomial project operators. That's why it's shortened for Hippo. Now how Hippo works is that it essentially takes a compression of all the input signals and puts it as a vector of coefficients. And then when the output is essentially being generated, it also the matrix kind of generates new tokens, but also decays the old tokens which are not usable. This became quite efficient when we are actually using state space model, and this ended up building a new architecture called structured space state space models. And this is essentially what's used in the Mamba architecture, where this is pretty much heavily used. Hope that was useful.